My name is Emma and I'm 30 years old. For 7 years, I thought hard work meant something in my family's restaurant supply business. I was wrong. My brothers Michael and David got fat paychecks while I did the real work. When I finally asked why, my father smiled and said, "Because they're men, sweetheart. You just buy shoes and handbags." I walked out that same day. He called after me laughing, "Good luck finding someone who wants you." Well, Dad, I didn't need anyone to want me. Became my own boss. Drop a comment if you've ever been told you weren't good enough by the people who were supposed to love you most. Hit that subscribe button because what happened next will shock you. You won't believe how this ends. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started. I grew up believing our family stood for something real. Dad always said, "Work speaks louder than words." The Anderson Family Restaurant Supply Company had been around for 20 years. Dad started with one truck and a dream. By the time I finished college, we had warehouses in 3 cities. I thought I'd be part of building something bigger. I studied business and hospitality management. Graduated at the top of my class. My brothers. Michael barely passed his classes. David changed his major 4 times. But somehow, I was the one who had to prove myself. From my very first day at Anderson Supply Company, I became the fixer. Angry restaurant owner. And Emma. Shipment arrived damaged. Emma will handle it. Supplier raised prices overnight. Emma knows what to do. I worked until midnight most days. Weekends. Those became workdays too. My brothers showed up at 10, left by 4. And somehow got all the credit. Michael spent his time playing golf with clients. Half of those golf games led to nothing. David. He had this special talent for arriving late to every meeting and then taking credit for my ideas. But hey, they had something I didn't have. They were boys. 7 years went by like this. Then one Tuesday morning everything changed. Our bookkeeper, Janet, accidentally left payroll papers on the printer. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just needed to print an order form. But there it was, staring at me in black ink. Michael's salary. $92,000. David's salary. $85,000. My salary, $40,000. $40,000. And blinked. Surely this was old information. Maybe from years ago. But no. The date was right there. Current payroll. Current numbers. My stomach felt sick. All those nights I stayed late fixing their mistakes. All those weekends I spent keeping customers happy. All those times Dad patted my head and said, "You're such a hard worker, Emma." Words. Meaningless praise while my brothers collected double my pay for doing half the work. I couldn't focus the rest of that day. My hands shook every time I picked up the phone. By the time I drove home, I'd made my decision. This was going to stop. I deserved answers. I deserved better. The next morning I marched straight into HR. Asked for a formal meeting about my compensation. I thought we'd sit down like adults. I thought they'd see the mistake and fix it. Looking back, I was so foolish. The HR meeting got scheduled for the following Monday. I spent the entire week preparing. Printed out every email where clients praised my work. Made charts showing which accounts I managed versus my brothers. Created a whole presentation proving my value. Numbers don't lie, right? Well, numbers lie when your last name is on the building. Monday arrived. I walked into that conference room with my folder of proof. Janet from HR looked uncomfortable from the second I sat down. She kept glancing at Dad's office door like she wished she was anywhere else. "Emma, I understand you want to discuss your pay," she started, her voice soft. "I want to understand why there's such a big difference between what I earn and what my brothers earn," I said, sliding my papers across the table. "Based on performance, something doesn't add up." She didn't even look at my charts. Just picked up her phone. "Let me get your father." My heart sank. This wasn't going to be the simple conversation I'd imagined. 5 minutes later, I sat in Dad's big office. The office with the leather chairs and the mahogany desk. The office designed to make people feel small. Janet sat beside me, writing notes she'd probably never read. Dad flipped through my charts like he was looking at a grocery list. "Emma, sweetie," he said in that voice. That annoying voice he uses when he thinks I'm being emotional. "I don't think you understand how business works. Sweetie." Like I was 5 years old asking why the sky is blue. "Then explain it to me," I said, keeping my voice steady. He leaned way back in his chair. "Your brothers have bigger responsibilities. They handle the major clients. They manage complex negotiations. Those jobs carry more risk." I stared at him. "Dad, I manage the Thompson Restaurant Group, the Martinez Hotel chain, the entire downtown district accounts. Together, those bring in 60% of our revenue." His jaw twitched. I was messing up his story. "Yes, but Emma, you're good at operations. Leadership requires something different." Michael spent 3 hours last month keeping Thompson from leaving when David messed up their order. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I spent 3 days fixing that mess David created. I was the one who found a new supplier overnight. I was the one who personally delivered their order at 6 in the morning." Silence filled the room. Janet stared at her notepad like the secrets of the universe were written there. Finally, Dad put down my papers. Looked me straight in the eye. "They're men, Emma. And you just waste money on shoes and handbags." Time stopped. 7 years of working until exhaustion. 7 years of loyalty. 7 years of being the best employee he had. All reduced to this. Because I was born female. "Excuse me," I whispered. "Men have families to support. They need career growth. Financial stability. You'll probably get married soon, have babies, want to stay home. It doesn't make sense to invest in someone who's temporary." Temporary. 7 years. And I was temporary. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to work. "I see," I said quietly. "Now, Emma, don't get emotional about this. Business is business." Emotional. Course. Because recognizing discrimination makes me emotional. "You're absolutely right, Dad. Business is business." I reached into my purse. Pulled out my company credit card. My office keys. My parking pass. Placed them on his desk, one by one. "Consider this my resignation. Effective in 2 weeks." The color drained from his face like water from a bathtub. "Emma, let's not be hasty. 2 weeks. That's professional courtesy. Since family clearly means something different to each of us." I turned to walk out. Almost made it to the door. Then his voice stopped me cold. "Who's going to hire you, Emma?" I turned back slowly. For the first time in my entire life, I saw him clearly. Not as my dad. Not as my boss. As exactly what he was. A small man who built himself up by making others smaller. "You know what, Dad? That's the wrong question." He raised his eyebrows, waiting. "The right question is, who's going to keep your customers happy when I'm gone?" The sound that followed me out was his laughter. Not angry. Not worried. Just genuinely amused. Like I'd told him the funniest joke in the world. That laugh became the fuel for everything that came next. I spent my 2-week notice being more professional than they deserved. Documented every process. Wrote detailed notes about every client's preferences. Created instruction manuals for things I did in my sleep. I refused to let anyone say I left them unprepared. Michael got assigned my accounts. Watching him flip through my notes with panic in his eyes almost made me smile. "Jesus, Emma, you really managed all of this yourself?" he asked, staring at the Thompson file. "Every single day," I replied cheerfully. "Mrs. Thompson likes phone calls before 8 in the morning. Never during lunch. She hates excuses. Everything you need is in those notes." David poked his head in. "So what's your plan? Got another job lined up?" Everyone kept asking that. Like the only option was trading one boss for another. "Something like that," I said, packing my stuff into boxes. What I didn't tell them was that I'd been researching for weeks. Business licenses. Insurance requirements. Startup costs. I'd been saving money for years. Turns out, being underpaid taught me to live on very little. That was about to become my greatest strength. The family business never made us sign employment contracts. Another sign they never saw me as a threat. On my last day, Dad called me into his office one final time. "Emma, I've been thinking," he began. For one stupid moment, I hoped for an apology. "Maybe we can work something out. Small raise. 10%. 10% of my joke salary." After discovering I made less than half what my brothers made. "That's generous," I said, meaning the exact opposite. "But I've already made other arrangements." His face changed. "What kind of arrangements?" "The kind where competence matters more than gender." I'd planned to leave quietly, but word spread through the office anyway. Janet from HR threw me a small goodbye party in the break room. Just cake and coffee. But it mattered more than she knew. "We'll miss you," she whispered as everyone went back to work. "This place won't be the same." I believed her. Not because I was irreplaceable, but because the work I did mattered. Everyone except my family seemed to understand that. My last task was visiting each major client to say goodbye professionally. Mrs. Thompson from Thompson Restaurant Group insisted on taking me to lunch. "Your father's a fool," she said bluntly over her salad. "I've been in this business 30 years. You're one of the sharpest people I've ever worked with. If you ever start your own company, call me. If I ever start my own company." Those words echoed in my head that night as I sat in my apartment, surrounded by boxes. Pulled out my laptop. Started typing. Business plan. Mission statement. Financial projections. By 3 in the morning I had something real. Anderson Restaurant Solutions would become my past. Sterling Supply Group would be my future. My company. My rules. My salary structure based on merit, not gender. The next morning I filed my business license. 3 days later, I signed a lease for a small office space. Nothing fancy. Just 2 rooms and a tiny reception area. But it was mine. And that laugh. Dad's dismissive laugh when I quit. It became my motivation. Every time I doubted myself, I heard that sound. And I remembered exactly why I was doing this. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting ahead. Have you ever had someone tell you that you'd fail, only to prove them wrong? Drop a comment below about your victory moment. Starting a business with limited money and unlimited determination is terrifying and exciting at the same time. My savings account suddenly looked tiny when I viewed it as business capital. But I'd learned to live on very little. That was about to save me. My new office came with nothing. I spent the first week shopping at thrift stores. Used desk from a garage sale. A chair that squeaked but worked. Coffee maker that became my best friend. The reception area stayed empty. I couldn't afford to hire anyone yet. The first month humbled me in ways I never expected. I went from managing million-dollar accounts to answering my own phone calls. Filing my own paperwork. Learning that business insurance costs more than my car payment. But I was free. Free from family expectations. Free from being undervalued. Free from watching my brothers coast on privilege while I worked twice as hard. Some mornings, I'd arrive at my empty office, make coffee, and just smile at the quiet. My business plan was simple. Provide excellent service to small and medium restaurants. The ones too small for big companies to care about. My father's company always chased the huge contracts, leaving an entire market ignored. Finding those first clients required creativity. I spent weeks researching restaurants, making phone calls, attending every networking event I could find. My pitch became sharp through repetition. Personalized service, fast response, honest pricing. My breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Mrs. Peterson, who owned my office building, had been managing her 3 restaurants herself for 10 years. The stress was killing her. "Emma, honey," she said one afternoon when I paid rent. "You mentioned you do restaurant supply. I'm drowning in vendor problems and equipment breakdowns. What would that cost?" My first client. The contract wasn't huge. 3 small restaurants. But it was real. Within 2 weeks, I'd solved a freezer problem she'd been dealing with for 6 months, negotiated better prices with her food suppliers, set up an online system for her to track orders. Mrs. Peterson was so happy, she told 2 other restaurant owners. They called me the next week. By month 3, I had 8 restaurants under contract. Enough steady income to cover my rent with a little left over. Nothing fancy, but sustainable. More importantly, I was building a reputation. When problems got solved quickly, when deliveries arrived on time, when equipment got fixed fast, these weren't just business wins. They were proof that competence beats connections. I created systems for everything: client communication, vendor relationships, financial tracking. Everything my father's company did, but better and more efficient. The loneliness was real though. 7 years of working with people left me unprepared for working alone. Some days, my only conversation was with Mrs. Peterson or delivery drivers. But slowly I found my rhythm. 3 months in, my phone rang with a number I recognized. My stomach dropped. Sterling Supply Group, this is Emma. Emma, it's Janet. From Anderson Supply. My heart raced. Hi Janet. How's everything? Well, that's why I'm calling. We've had some problems with the Thompson account since you left. Mrs. Thompson specifically asked if we could recommend another supplier. I know this is awkward, but would you be interested? I stared at my wall, processing. Thompson Restaurant Group. My former client. The account Michael inherited. Looking for new representation. Janet, I appreciate you thinking of me, but wouldn't that create conflict? Actually, they terminated their contract with us 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Thompson said service quality dropped too much. She needs someone who understands her needs. Someone who understands. After 4 years of managing their account, learning every detail of their operation, I definitely understood. I'd be very interested in speaking with them. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. My first major client. Potentially coming back to me. Not through family connections, but because they valued quality work. The irony was delicious. Dad's question echoed. Who's going to hire you? Well, Dad. My former clients were lining up to hire me. The Thompson contract changed everything. Not just the money, though the retainer was more than I'd made in 3 months. It changed how I saw myself as a business owner. This wasn't charity. This was a major client choosing my services based on merit. The transition meeting with Mrs. Thompson was scheduled for Tuesday. I'd worked with her for 4 years. We had mutual respect. But sitting in her office as the owner of my own company felt surreal. Emma, I'll be direct, Mrs. Thompson began. The service since you left Anderson Supply has been terrible. Orders that used to arrive within hours now take days. Communication is spotty. We need reliability. Frankly, we need someone who gets our operation. I nodded, pulling out my presentation. Let me show you what Sterling Supply Group can offer. For an hour I walked through my service philosophy. Response times. Communication protocols. Pricing structure. Everything I'd learned about her operation. Now perfected with systems I'd built. This sounds exactly like what we had before, Mrs. Thompson said with a smile. Which makes sense since you created those systems. The contract was signed that afternoon. Thompson Restaurant Group became my anchor client. Steady revenue. Industry credibility. Within weeks, word spread through the restaurant community. Emma Anderson, formerly of Anderson Supply, was running her own operation and delivering results. Networking events became productive. People returned my calls. Referrals started coming in. The best part. Clients were seeking me out through word of mouth. No cold calls needed when reputation travels fast. By month 6 I hired my first employee, Sarah Martinez. Fresh out of college with energy that could power a small city. Having someone handle administrative tasks freed me to focus on clients and growth. It's amazing how efficiently this place runs compared to my internship at a big company, Sarah observed. Everyone there knew their job, But nobody seemed to care about quality. Sarah's comment reminded me why I started this. Not just to escape family discrimination, but to create something better. Where competence got rewarded. Where excellence was standard, not the exception. Growth was steady but not overwhelming. I was careful not to take on more than we could handle perfectly. Each new client became a reference for the next. Each successfully managed account enhanced our reputation. The most satisfying moments came when former colleagues called with questions. Michael struggling with a contract. David dealing with a difficult supplier. Even Janet asking for advice on starting her own consulting business. Helped them all. Not out of bitterness, but because helping each other is how business should work. The contrast between my new professional relationships and my family dynamic became stark. My parents invited me to Sunday dinner regularly. Conversations always turned to questions about my little business. Mom worried about my financial security. Dad made suggestions about clients I should pursue. Both seemed to assume my venture was temporary. A phase I'd outgrow before returning to the family. You know, Emma, if you ever want to come back to Anderson Supply, there would always be a place for you, Dad said during one awkward dinner. Your brothers could use help with operations. Help with operations. Translation. I could return to my old role making them look competent while they collected credit and bigger salaries. I'm happy where I am, I replied evenly. But is it sustainable? Mom asked with genuine concern. Running your own business is so risky, honey. Risky. What's risky is depending on family who don't value you. By month 8, Sterling Supply Group was managing 15 restaurants with combined revenue over $30 million. Sarah had been joined by Marcus, an experienced logistics coordinator I'd recruited. We were becoming a real company. The call came on a Thursday while I was reviewing supplier contracts. Sarah knocked with an unreadable expression. Emma, there's someone on line 2 from Davidson Hotel Group. He's asking to speak with you about supply services. Davidson Hotel Group. One of my father's largest clients. Worth over $100 million. I'd managed their account for 3 years. Picked up the phone. This is Emma Anderson. Emma, this is Robert Davidson. I hope you remember me. Remember him. He was one of the most demanding but fair clients I'd ever had. Of course, Mr. Davidson. How can I help you? I'll be direct. We're reviewing our current suppliers. Frankly, we're not satisfied with Anderson Supply since you left. I understand you're running your own operation now. My pulse quickened. Davidson Hotel Group would be the largest client Sterling Supply had ever pursued. It would also mean directly competing with my family's business for their most valuable account. Sterling Supply Group has been operating for 8 months. We're selectively taking on new clients whose needs align with our capabilities. I'd like to discuss those capabilities. Are you available for lunch tomorrow? The meeting with Robert Davidson felt like validation. Over 2 hours at an expensive restaurant. He outlined his frustrations with brutal honesty. Response times have tripled, he said. Problems that you used to solve in hours now take days to acknowledge. When I call with concerns, I get bounced between your brothers. Nobody actually handles my problems. I listened without criticizing my family. Professional discretion demanded neutrality. Tell me about your current capacity, he continued. Davidson Hotel Group would represent significant growth. Can you handle it? Honest answer. It would stretch us considerably. But growth without quality is worthless. Mr. Davidson, your portfolio would require us to expand significantly. I'd want a transition plan that maintains service quality throughout. That means starting with part of your hotels and gradually taking on more as we prove ourselves. He smiled. That's exactly the realistic planning I haven't heard in months. Most companies promise everything immediately and deliver nothing. By the end of lunch, we'd outlined a preliminary agreement. Davidson would transition 5 hotels as a trial. If our performance met standards, they'd consider moving their entire portfolio. 5 hotels. Not everything, but enough to double my company's revenue overnight. More importantly, it was Davidson Hotel Group choosing my services based on track record, not family connections. The conversation I'd been dreading came that evening. Mom called, her voice bright with forced casualness. "Emma, honey, your father heard an interesting rumor. Something about Davidson Hotel Group considering other suppliers. Word traveled fast in our industry. I had lunch with Robert Davidson today," I confirmed. Silence. "Are you considering working with them?" "Mom, they're considering working with me." "There's a difference." "But, Emma, that's one of our biggest clients. Doesn't that create conflict with the family business?" There it was. The assumption that family loyalty meant professional sacrifice. "No conflict," I said evenly. "I'm running my company, serving clients who choose to work with us. If they prefer our services, that's the market." "The market? Emma, we're your family." "Yes, you are my family. But Anderson Supply is my former employer. In business, those are different relationships." Mom was quiet. "Your father isn't going to be happy." "Dad's happiness isn't my concern anymore. My business performance is." After I hung up, I sat thinking about the magnitude of what was happening. 8 months ago, I was a dismissed employee earning half what my brothers made. Now major clients were seeking my services, choosing my company based on results rather than relationships. Monday morning, I called Robert Davidson and accepted his proposal. Sterling Supply Group would take on its biggest challenge yet. And the girl Dad laughed at. She was about to become his biggest competitor. What do you think happens next? Will Emma's family business fight back? Or will more clients follow? Drop your predictions in the comments. And subscribe because this story gets even better. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe to Women's Revenge for more stories about finding your power when the people who should support you most become the ones you need to step away from. Sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. And sometimes success is the sweetest revenge.